Listen, I've never had any problem expressing my opinions, but what we're doing here is bigger than that. These are conversations that need to be had in an unfiltered way. Drag racing's all I've ever done. It's all I care to do. I respect the history, I appreciate how far we've come, but I want more for this sport, and I'll fight for it. It's uncut, it's unfiltered. This is the show of shows. The biggest names in drag racing. No holds barred. This is the great American motorsport. Drag racing. Prove me wrong. I'll wait. Hey gang, Wes Buck here, Drag Illustrated Magazine, checking in. It is Wednesday, June 5th, 2024. Hope you're doing well. We got a wild show for you guys today. In just about 20 minutes, I believe, about 2:30 Central Standard Time, we're going to be joined by promoter of the wildly popular War in the Woods No Prep Shootout. Jeff Thomas will join us at 2:30, and then at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, we'll be joined by Modern Racing's own Justin Elkes, fresh off a big win as a crew chief on Mason Wright's Elite Motorsports Modern Racing Fielded Pro Mod car at the NHRA New England Nationals. But man, there's a lot of ground to cover. We had, in all honesty, not as much drag racing going on this past weekend as we have in the last few, but nonetheless, another banner weekend for the sport of drag racing. Nothing I enjoy more than getting on the internet or whatever, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday after a race and seeing all these photos of packed grandstands, back-to-back sellouts, sellout days for the NHRA at the New England Nationals. I know that this is one of those stops on the tour that is somewhat polarizing. It's way up there near Boston. It's not really close for anybody. I had a team owner one time tell me that New England Dragway may as well be in Shanghai, as far away as it is from everything. But I was telling my team earlier this week, I just love the way drag racing looks at venues like New England Dragway, an iconic vintage atmosphere-rich drag strip like New England Dragway. I totally agree with the need in our sport to have world-class facilities. The strip at Las Vegas, it's beautiful. I'm at a loss every time I roll through the gate of a facility like that. ZMAX Dragway in Concord, Charlotte, or Concord, North Carolina, right outside of Charlotte. It is truly overwhelming for me every time I roll up on that place and just see this incredible venue that exists for the sport of drag racing. And I'm so glad those venues exist. But I got to tell you, you've heard me say it before, worth repeating, some bands sound better in a honky-tonk. And I'm telling you, drag racing is that band. And I love to see the stars of the NHRA Drag Racing Series on full display at a venue like that. Incredible, newsworthy weekend. We got a lot of stuff in the headlines in the first part of this week that we're going to talk about here. But before I get any further along, let me go ahead and introduce my co-host here on the Wes Buck Show, the one and only Mike Carpenter. What's going on, buddy? JT, we're
What's
down,
up,
man. I mean,
we're down.
1 week we've got him here as a freaking stranger, all clean shaven, can hardly recognize him.
That's court appearance, JT.
Court appearance, JT. Yeah. And now he's just completely no-showed us. He's had some vehicle issues today. The replacement Murder Silverado, right? Yeah, I guess it failed him in some way. Hate to hear that about.
Well, we have made him hike that thing across country a couple times.
Yeah,
as the official shit hauler for
all things Drag Illustrated.
All things Drag Illustrated events, World Door Slammer Nationals, World Series of Pro Mod, anything else we can come up with. PRI, he comes to PRI fully loaded for bear. Yeah, so
he made back-to-back trips down to Florida from Northeast Missouri earlier this year for those two races, and I genuinely felt bad. I'm like, oh boy, homeboy's about to put some miles on the rig. But I told him it's good for you. It's good for you to experience. That's the grind that drag racers experience 24/7. Yeah. You know, so it's great.
I've done enough riding around in trucks.
I miss it.
You have to. Yeah, I kind of miss it too, man. You talk about like Epping being far away. I mean, Epping is not close by any means, but it's nothing compared to some of those Canadian tracks that we used to haul to in the IHRA days. Cayuga, Grand Bend, and then especially Edmonton. We never went to Edmonton. When that came up on the schedule, I think my dad went ahead and marked that one, big X on that one. We're gonna skip that one. But we made it to Cayuga into Grand Bend, but not without a lot of cussing and a lot of like, what are we doing here?
How big of a battle was Edmonton, right? I mean, that in many ways you can point to that singular event on the IHRA National Event Tour as the demise of Mountain Motor Pro Stock quarter mile race, at least initially. I mean, it's obviously
that was a huge
having
deal.
A resurgence now.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, it hurt everything. And that was kind of the start of, you started to see some decision making that led you to believe these guys are going a different direction with this sanctioning body and with some of the core series. I mean, IHRA was always Southeast focused. That's kind of how it grew with the Pro Mod and Mountain Motor Pro Stock. And of course, Funny Car and Top Fuel was pretty nationwide, but it was based so heavily off those classes, and a lot of the Southern heavy sportsman classes, Top Sportsman, things like that, it was built off of, and they kind of branched out with that. And it really kind of was the start of that deal, sort of the wheels falling off, in my opinion. The other two events, Grand Bend is right above Detroit. I think if I've got them right, Cayuga is right across the border from Buffalo. So not too bad there, but the Edmonton deal was a no-go. We went to San Antonio. It's actually where I met you.
Yeah.
In 2007, San Antonio. That was even quite an ask for your racer base at that time. But as we've talked about, like with the Epping deal, and the fact that Pro Mod raced there this year, I think was caught a little bit, was a surprising development. But as we talked about, these guys are going to Vegas. They're going to, what was the event they went to earlier this year that was kind of off the beaten path? Chicago.
Chicago.
But these guys are spread out now. They're up there in the Northeast. They're out west. I think of Justin Bond, and I think of the whole Canadian crew, which has kind of infiltrated Pro Mod. A race like Edmonton is in their backyard. So this deal's kind of spreading out when you start to look at these national touring series.
Yeah, I agree, man. And it's one of those things that it's Scott Wildgus in the comments saying, "Don't pick on our."
Yeah.
And I love those facilities.
Well, Scott's here in Mooresville, North Carolina now too, at least part time. So yeah,
it's a tough thing. And I look at series like NMCA, PDRA, Midwest Drag Racing Series, and like clearly there is a place in the drag racing landscape for these regionalized series. I will say that I'm with you. I think that the IHRA, I loved when it had a little bit larger of a footprint and was going a little more around the country. But to your point, when your racer base is located there in the Southeast, or at least along the East Coast, it definitely makes sense to stay out in that neck of the woods. But I think as our sport, kind of continues to grow, I think it's going to be important. I mean, I'm looking at PDRA going, I think they're going to have to venture outside. And I believe we're going to see PDRA in Bristol in August. They're going to, I'm excited to see them kind of continue to try new venues, because I'm not saying there's nothing wrong at all with repeating and going back to certain places and building tradition. But I do think as that deal continues to evolve, there's going to be, some need perhaps to just try some new markets. And I mean, to your point, man, that Pro Mod is no longer an East Coast thing or a deep South thing. It's a nationwide, worldwide. I call it the universal language of drag racing. I say that for a reason, because it's the only class of professional racing that is successfully contested in mass around the globe. So no, it's an interesting thing, man. And I really would like to actually continue down this IHRA road, but we've got huge news that we would be remiss not to kind of spend a bulk of our time here talking about. One of the most, this felt like a moment. I was reflecting on it over the course of the last couple of days early in this week, and just how significant John Force finally acknowledging that the end is near. It really is. I mean, because there's always for honestly, as long as I've been in drag racing in a professional capacity, almost 20 years, there's always been this, like, when's it going to end? How much longer does he have? I think I may have wrote an editorial or two back in the early days of Drag Illustrated back in like 2006. I mean, almost 20 years ago, saying we have to be replacing we have to be replacing the John Forces of the world. We have to be developing the next class of stars.
We put him on the cover, I think, at least once or twice.
Anticipating.
Yeah, saying, hey, we might not get a chance to do this. let's
And
get
we
him on
took
the
a
cover.
lot of shit for that. I mean, if
Yeah.
you remember when we put John Force on the
yeah.
cover of DI-51, and that was when we unveiled the new logo. I'd gotten sued by Time Incorporated for logo,
Yeah,
blah, blah,
I've
blah. We did
forgotten
all
that.
this drama going on. And DI-51, I wanted to kind of relaunch the brand. I don't even know what year that would have been. A long time ago. We're on issue 180.
I think it was like 20. I want to say, was it like 2012 or something like that? Somewhere
something
in that
like
region.
that. Yeah. So 12 years ago,
11,
roughly.
12.
Yeah, we're kind of relaunching the magazine. We've changed the logo. We've changed the way we print the magazine. We went from saddle stitch to a perfect bound magazine. We had all gloss. Like, it was a big moment for us. And to your point, we were talking, man, if we don't get John Force on the cover of this thing soon, we may run out of opportunities. And I didn't want to wait until it was some retrospective look back piece. I wanted John Force to be on the cover of Drag Illustrated while he was still a force to be reckoned with in our sport, while he was still competitive. And we made that move to put him on the cover of DI-51. And, 130 issues of the magazine later, this dude's still in the winner's circle. I mean, before we talk about the significance of all this and what comes next, it is rare air that any pro level athlete, pro level competitor is able to maintain relevance for this period of time. Had he stopped back in 2012 or whatever, after we put him on the cover, and he'd fresh off a championship win, if I remember correctly, and all these things are happening.
And we shot him, remember, with all of his Wallies and championship trophies lined up. Epic photography from Jason Sharp, I believe.
Those were the days, man. And that was actually, I met Leah Pruitt that weekend.
Yeah.
I met Tom McEwen that weekend. Basically, I flew out to LA and drove down to Yorba Linda, met Jason Sharp out there, our director of photography at the time, and we rolled up on JFR, which is like a former Infinity dealership. Like, it's a sprawling facility. And anyways, we go in here, and Leah Pruitt came by, and she was on the come up at that time. She was still driving a Nostalgia Nitro funny car at the time. It was my first time getting to know her. We went to lunch with Tom McEwen, which was a kind of pinch me situation to find myself in. Road to lunch.
Dude, since the early days, remember Tom McEwen would like call, the phone would ring and it'd say Tom McEwen. And he was calling crazy, like looking for ad artwork because he was in the magazine business too. And it's I'm like, crazy, am I really getting a call from the Mongoose asking for an ad for his magazine?
It's so funny. And he would actually refer to himself as the Mongoose, like, which I loved, like you call, hey, it's the Mongoose, and it's like, this is the coolest thing.
My dad actually met him from the early days in the 80s. Remember when Mongoose built that 57 Chevy funny car and they toured the West Coast?
Perhaps one of the best looking funny cars.
Oh yeah,
ever.
But that deal was like an exhibition, and he would tour around with the Super Chevy deal, and that was, man, my dad was in awe of that. He's like, here I am out racing, and the Mongoose, just hanging out with the Mongoose, and he's racing with us. So that was awesome. But
to me, like, thinking about how long he has been such an impactful force in our sport it's a surreal thing. And I can't give the guy his flowers enough, because I look at him as someone who has forged his own path, done it his own way, had great partners along the way. There's been tremendous continuity. He's shaken things up. I mean, John Force, I remember that was one of his go-to things, right? It's like, I need to shake things up. And he'd move crew chiefs from car to car, and he would make changes. But there was a continuity overall that existed within the JFR camp. And I'm sure they've had people come and go, and there's always...
Well, he's also battled back from a lot of adversity.
Unbelievable.
I can remember that Kenny Bernstein deal, that crash. And I mean, it looked like both of those guys could be killed in that crash. And then he came out with his feet half chopped off or whatever happened there, with his feet and his fingers, and he was all messed up, and has come back from that. Even I honestly thought that was going to be the end.
I mean,
and that was in 2008, if I'm correct.
I mean, to go through that as a young man would be impressive to return from, but to go through that as an older gentleman is a pretty incredible feat. And you can't, like I said, I can't say enough about what he has done, and what I think it is inarguable that he is the greatest drag racer of all time. I don't think anybody has had the impact on our sport that he has. And the thing, and I've said this to John before, is what I've really respected about him is his willingness to just own it, lean in, be that guy, because that's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of pressure and a lot of expectation to endure for a few years. I mean, it's constantly talked about in the stick and ball sports world that, the pressure these guys find themselves under when they're in the limelight and they're the center of attention, or they're the leader on a team, or they're the leader in a locker room. There's a lot of pressure that comes with that. And to see John have accepted that role, accepted that responsibility, and done it at such an incredibly high level.
It's like an obligation.
It's incredible, because he doesn't have to do that.
Yeah, we've kind of felt like we don't have any proof of this, and I don't even know if this is the right way to say, but it's almost like John knew that he had to keep it going for NHRA, and NHRA did what they could. I mean, everyone says John Force is just oversaturated. He gets too much coverage, he gets this and that, but it's kind of a symbiotic relationship between those two that they knew they needed each other to continue to build this thing to what end, we don't know. And even when we launched the Pro Superstar Shootout, I remember, if you remember, we had this conversation. I told myself, man, I think we can get a lot of these guys that aren't John Force Racing, but I don't know if we can get Force. What do you think? I mean, he's so, just for all the reasons I just said, that he's NHRA to the bone. And then when he was on board right from the get-go, I was like, okay, we have something here, and this is going to be a big deal. And I feel like that his commitment alone to that event gave the rest of us the confidence to move forward.
I'm telling you, up until the day of the race, the week of the race,
yeah, we were like, is John going to show up?
I mean, and I'm not trying to, but we parked him strategically. Like, the way we had him in the pits was with a possibility that he would not be there. And it was a real pressure-packed situation for all of us. And, because I'm going, all right, if we promote that he's coming and he's for some reason, an obligation to NHRA or some conversation that happens, this is, I fear nothing, right? We, fear God. That's it.
Oh, we were eyeballs deep in that deal at that point. So there was no turning back, but we knew that was the catalyst of making this a legit, not a legitimate event, but just full bore what we intended
in year one. Like things like that are massively important. Just that group buy-in, the demonstration, the act of simply being there. Like it wasn't important.
He had a blast too. I think he enjoyed that event. He even told us so. I think he enjoyed that event as much as anybody. It harkened back to his roots, his original days.
We rode the elevator up together, and I had my hat on, and we rode the elevator up together in the hotel in Chicago, and it was him and Lori and Brittany, and he goes, Buck, that you? And I said, yeah. And I said, what's up, John? And he's like, hey, good to see you. Good to see you. He goes, we gonna do that deal? It sounds like we're gonna do that deal. And he was genuinely excited about it. And I thought, it's just how few people get to have that experience where, like, an icon like John Force, like, it was a real humbling and surreal moment for me. And I tell my wife that all the time, like, as a lifelong drag racer, as a diehard fan of this sport, and just a passionate believer in what happens here, to have even a loose relationship with a guy like that, someone who is responsible for so much of our sport's growth and success, and has built this monstrosity of a business inside the sport of drag racing, like, to have a relationship with him is a pretty unbelievable, pretty pinch me moment for me. But what I wanted to say about John is that I think it's incredible that he has embraced that role. I feel like he's been the center of the main tent pole, right, for the NHRA. He has been the beam at the center of the circus tent, holding this thing up for decades now. And I'm genuinely excited. I'm happy for him, because I do think that the grind of doing this, and I don't think we're going to see less of John Force necessarily. I think he's always going to have a presence at the racetrack. He's going to be a very visible owner operator type of thing. But this is not, it's almost, at some point, it perhaps becomes counterproductive, right? To have,
you could see it. You could see that in his top end interview at Epping. He won, and he's not the usual hooping and hollering John Force. He was like emotional, subdued, and intent on kind of using it as an opportunity to start to break the ice on this conversation, which was unique, and it was striking. And it, for him to say that Austin Prock is going to take over for him, I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to figure that out. That that's the next logical move. But for him to kind of say it again in his interview with Alan Reinhart on the stage at the starting line after the TV interview, it was very striking to finally hear him admit it, because I feel like he's gone out of his way to avoid admitting to that. And then now it's like maybe that was even unplanned, and just the emotion of that win just caught him off guard. And and that's the other thing too I wanted to say, you know, his resurgence this year is something remarkable, because he's had a couple of rough years where he didn't perform up to his normal standards, and he's been a mid top 10 runner for a few years now, but he's up there in the points. He's won 2 races this year. He's running very well. And so for him to kind of take the wind out of the sails a little bit and throw that at us was jarring. And we all kind of were struck by it and had to go back and watch it a couple times.
The whole situation it really is an interesting thing to think about. And I want to actually play that interview real quick because that top end exchange between was it Bruno Massel down on the big end? I believe.
I think so.
I think it was Bruno Massel down on the big end on behalf of NHRA on Fox, speaking with John right after the win, and on the top end, right alongside Austin Prock. And there was this moment here where he hands the trophy to Austin and walks off. And it really, I mean, I get goosebumps. Like, just it felt impactful. I thought to myself, I saw Mark from NHRA National Dragster. I saw a bunch of guys, Mark Gerwitz. I saw a bunch of photographers capturing that moment. And I thought to myself, like, those photos are going to be important. Like, this may really, truly be it. And it's what comes after John Force. I mean, I do think that before we dive into our first guest of the show here, I do think it's important that we riff on this a little bit, because this is something that has been brewing for years. This conversation has existed for years. And I got to tell you, like, as impactful as he has been, I am almost excited to see what I think this is going to be, for me personally, one of the most significant, like, retirement things I've experienced, right? Like, I mean, I'm just kind of going to other sports. I mean, I remember when Mark McGwire retired from the St. Louis Cardinals or whatever, and you have this moment of going, oh man, I'm never going to see Big Mac, smack another home run. I thought about it when, many of my favorite fighters have retired, and thinking about this might be it. I actually watched UFC 302 or whatever it was over the weekend, and Dustin Poirier, after losing in the main event, said something along the lines of, this might be it. And I thought, man, this dude's been a stud. He's like a great ambassador for mixed martial arts. And it's going to be real sad if that's it. But he didn't want to, so many of these guys go out on their shield, right? Like, the last time they're out competing at a high level, they get obliterated. So taking all of that and kind of bundling it up into the notion that John Force is clearly looking at going out as relevant as ever, as much of a force as ever, I think is a really incredible thing. But like I said, I got to be honest, I'm kind of excited about what opportunities this create, because as you said earlier, there's been so much limelight and so much attention, and so much attention's the word. He gobbles up so much attention. We've seen it, like, I'll share these things. John Force in a headline, it's like 10 or 50 to 1, the traffic that his name generates. It is truly unbelievable. When I look back at our ticket sales metrics from the Pro Superstar Shootout, we had a lot of our teams in the final weeks, helping us drive ticket sales, helping us promote the races. Drag Illustrated's going crazy. Flow's going crazy. The FOT's going crazy. Everybody's trying to help. Bradenton Motorsports Park going crazy. One of the biggest upticks in ticket sales that we saw was when John Force made a post about it. There were plenty of people making posts, and we just weren't really seeing any movement ticket sales wise. John Force makes a few posts, and I can immediately track it to conversions, to ticket sales. And I'm going, it's special what this guy has built.
Well, when he said this at the top end, we were like, Kayla, our social media manager and digital editor, was right on top of it, cranked out a quote card, got that out, because I mean, we're in that business. We knew the quicker we get that out and this information out there in a bite-sized, grabbable piece that's shareable, this thing's going to basically go viral And it did. And there were several more after that, because you can bet big news like that attached to John Force is going to go, but nuclear on social. So let's play that clip. And
let's play that clip, and we'll riff on it a little bit more before we get Jeff Thomas on the show here. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is John Force on the top end at New England Dragway. We're going to see
both drivers now in pre-stage, the funny car final.
In
all John Force racing affair, he's in deep.
Went in deep for old time's sake.
They go down the racetrack, and at the finish line, stripe for the 157th time. John forced around, and everybody else found out. For the 157th time, John Force is going to bring home a Wally. Here are the folks from New England Dragway handing him his Wally here today. Pass it over to John. John, you had a heck of a final round there. That was a close race between your teammate, Austin Prock. What did it take to beat the kid?
Well, a lot of luck, trust me. I could go through all the sponsors. I've been doing that all day, and I think they've been cutting all my stuff. I'm just going to thank Peak and Chevrolet and Cornwell and AAA of Southern, AAA of Epping. And I just really mean it. I talk too much. I say too much. But I want to say something that really does matter. This kid, because I'm there, is going to replace me.
I mean, shit, I got chills again.
Mic drop.
I got chills again. I just think about the significance of, like, if that really is it, holy moly, what a ride it's been. It's hard to really put into words, again, the significance this man has had in the sport of drag racing. But I will say, like, that is a perfect example. This kid is going to replace me. And I think Austin Prock has star power. I think he's got star potential. He's got a big personality. He is outgoing. He believes in himself. He's a cocksure young man. And I think that that's really important, because, it's really easy to have like that old imposter syndrome start to, creep in when you're like, oh man, am I ready for this moment? Am I ready to be that guy? But I am excited to see who's next. And I think maybe that needs to be a conversation for future episodes of this show, and a discussion that we revisit, because what's about to happen is there's about to be some spotlight and some attention available for the first time in a long time. And I'm looking around the pits right now going, who's going to step up? Because there's going to be an opportunity here. There's some people, obviously we got Tony Stewart, who needs no introduction and obviously has that same kind of impact on virtually everything he touches as John Force. But I'm looking at what young guy, what up and comer, what
you think John said, okay, now that we got Tony Stewart in here, now I can feel good about dipping out.
I guess if Tony has if Tony thinks that he's going to race until he's in his mid-70s like John, maybe we could all take a deep breath. I don't look at this as problematic. I've had a lot of texts like from friends and people in the industry that are going, this seems like this could be bad news. And, how many, can we really afford to lose a guy like that right now? And I think that people come and go. These things happen. It's the nature of, and you always have these feelings. Like I think it's just the way we interpret that type of like bad news, so to speak, is it's like, oh no. But I honestly think once he exits in a meaningful fashion, and he's going to be competitive, he's likely going to be in contention for a championship this year. I'm excited to see what happens next and who embraces this opportunity.
And this is what we've said internally also, until he vacates that limelight, everyone else is kind of, putting themselves in that second place position, or content with sort of not stepping up there and taking that limelight. And it wasn't going to happen until he's actually gone. And then someone is going to have to fill that void. So I honestly feel like the whole sport, I feel like everyone in it at NHRA, I'm sure in the back of their mind are, it is a little bit polarizing, where, part of you is upset or sad, and you're concerned about the future, but yet it is an opportunity, because there is going to be space vacated, and that's never going to happen until it actually happens.
And I think that, I guess, what's the over under on a retirement tour, a farewell tour?
I think it would be in the minus category.
Really?
Oh yeah. I'd say a retirement tour. I'd say minus 250.
So you think it's over after the end of the
No, minus 250 means.
Oh, it's a favor.
Means,
so you
means
think he'll run this year? See, this is why we need a betting show.
Yeah, this is why
I hate keeping track of odds or trying to figure this shit out. But
yeah,
I always forget the negative number. Yeah, is a favorite. But why? So you think he'll run the rest of this year and he'll run a 2025 campaign? That'll be the farewell tour because. I mean, if you're talking dollars and cents, can you give up all that merch sales? Can you give up all that?
Yeah, I don't think you have to do it. And someone hit that significant. I just feel like, again, his obligation and the way he feels about the sport, it would not be optimum for him to just all of a sudden after the final race of the year, hey guys, that was it, I'm done, and no one get to relish in it and all the things that can come along with that tour. The only thing about a retirement tour is, you kind of feels like it gives you the opportunity to change your mind like every weekend. So we'll see where it goes, man. But I think at the end of the day, this was the first time we saw him publicly talk about this at all. Before that, there was no mention of this. You couldn't get him to even speak of the end being near. So this is the first, and we'll see again if this is sort of a weight off his shoulders, how he continues to give his interviews for the rest of the year, what success he has the rest of this year. It's just something certainly to keep an eye on.
Yeah, because that's the thing, and that's why I think it's a real question, because if he does, like, say we embark on JFR embarks on a farewell tour in 2025, and by the time the countdown rolls around, he's number 2 or 3 in points, or he's won 3 or 4 races, and he's got a good hot rod. Like, that's the last thing that he's going to need in that moment. Because like, shit, I can still do this. Maybe I could, but hopefully by kind of announcing it the way that he has, or starting the conversation the way that he has, he's going to have had enough time. The quotes that I'm reading that I found really impactful were the ones where he just kind of talked about being ready and felt like his time was up 20 years ago, and to still be here, I'm sure he feels like he's kind of racing on borrowed time, and it's time. It's absolutely time. So, hey, before we bring Jeff on the show, I want to take a second and remind you guys that each and every one of the Wes Buck Show episodes is brought to you by way of our friends at Stroud Safety. What more can I say about the guys and gals at Stroud Safety, Oklahoma City's finest? Tommy Cunningham and the gang at Stroud are amongst the biggest supporters of the Wes Buck Show and Drag Illustrated, a part of everything that we do, from the Drag Illustrated World Series of Pro Mod to the 30 under 30 and everything in between. Huge supporters of ours and huge supporters of the sport of drag racing. They share our vision for the growth and future success of the sport of drag racing. I can't thank them enough. If you're interested or in the market for the world's best racing safety equipment, from fire suits to seatbelts and chutes to ballistic blankets, you want to make sure you buy made in America products from Stroud Safety. Log on to StroudSafety.com today and take care of the people that take care of us. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that this is one of my favorite things about this show, about this magazine, about the last 20 years of my life.
You stole it. That's the
bringing these worlds together. Like, for me, the thing that I continue to hang my hat on, and I'm not casting stones or throwing stones or whatever, but when I look around the drag racing landscape and I look at different media outlets, and everybody's doing their fair share and everybody's fighting the good fight, and it's much appreciated. But what I'm super proud of here is that we're willing to paint a wide swath. I think we're in an age of specialists. Warren Johnson said it 20 some odd years ago in Pro Stock that, it used to be one guy drove the truck to the track, unloaded the car, tuned the car, maintenance the car, drove the car. And now we're in an era of a lug nut specialist, a left side cylinder head, right side cylinder head, bottom end, clutch guy, chassis guy, shock guy. I mean, and that's completely fine. But I'm proud of the wide swath and the multiple hats that we're able to wear, and that we don't have to just operate inside of one specific niche. Like, there's a ton of media that supports almost exclusively NHRA, or almost exclusive radial tire racing, or almost exclusively no prep Kings racing, or no prep racing in general. And what I'm proud about is that we just spent a half hour talking about one of the greatest drag racers in the history of our sport, a name that is recognized around the world, perhaps has more name value than anybody in drag racing history. And now we get to talk to the one, the only. I think I saw this earlier. Let me find this comment real quick, because I think it's worth mentioning. If it isn't Index Jeff himself, aka Two Barrel JT, the one and only Jeff Thomas. What's going on, buddy?
How are you guys?
We're
doing good, man.
We couldn't have the normal JT. So we got a different JT for replacement.
We got us a different JT, man. What's going on, buddy? Hey, real quick, you're a well-known guy, and I want to talk War in the Woods real quick. But I think one of the things that I want to demonstrate in this moment is that we all race in different places. We all are part of different communities, but at the end of the day, we're drag racers. We're brothers and sisters in arms. I think that's a message that needs to be spoken more often, because what's good for NHRA is good for you, and vice versa. They may not realize it. NHRA may not realize it, but we do. And I know that it's important that all these things have some sort of symbiotic relationship, some sort of synergy amongst them all. So I just want to get, as someone who's a hardcore, no prep, small, street race type guy, I mean, even you surely have an appreciation for John Force. I mean, what do you make of the old man possibly retiring?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'm based out of Indianapolis, so the U.S. Nationals, and I grew up going out there Friday night every year with my dad. So, I'm real familiar with that, and I'd probably preface that with saying, like you just said, I'm a fan of all racing. You know what I mean? And I'm sure today's a prime example. You've seen a lot of negative stuff flying around about, certain people like to talk a lot of shit about no prep, or people like to talk about, radio. I think that's just horrible, man. Like you said, I mean, everybody, I support all racing. You know what I mean? Just because I choose to no prep doesn't mean I have a negative opinion of class racing or radial racing or NHRA or anything, but I mean, when, an icon of the sport is even whispering the words of hanging it up, I mean, obviously it's going to rock the racing community. And, probably, like you said, it's probably a real concern of who fills the void there, because, NHRA can't stand to lose too many of them, right?
No, I mean, you're 100% right. And I know we've had that conversation internally, is that, one of the things that the NHRA and Major League Drag Racing contends with isn't near as prevalent in other drag racing circles, is that so few people have so much impact, right? I mean, NHRA, they've got a few mega teams that fill the field in a lot of different ways. I mean, this past weekend in New England, these guys traveled a long way. They didn't have full fields in any of their pro categories except for pro modified, which, kind of makes my point for me. But you're 100% right, man. I mean, I like you, I'm a fan of all this stuff, and I've really fallen in love with events such as yours. I want to show this video real quick. My buddy Jimmy Dale, Tom Gunner, sent this over. Shout out to Old Man's Garage for shooting me this video. But I want folks to see this, because I think it kind of sets the stage for what you have going at War in the Woods. And I want to talk about how this came to be, how we've arrived at this point, and what comes next. But check out this video, guys. I'll give a little play-by-play for the people that are watching or listening in via an audio podcast. Basically, we've got a drone shot rolling down the drag strip there at Ohio Valley, checking in on Tom Gunner and Mike Poland there on the starting line. And I just, you can feel the atmosphere through the video. People betting, everybody talking, people elbow to elbow, arm in arm in many places. The plate, you've got fans all the way down both sides of the track, people camping. I mean, what an atmosphere that you've created. I look at this and I'm literally jealous that I wasn't there. I text you earlier. I'm going, man, I screwed up. I really was working on going, but this environment, even watching via video, is absolutely electrifying. People sitting on the hill there. I mean, humans everywhere you can see. How did we arrive at this point, man? I mean, where did War in the Woods come from? Just take me through a little bit of the history of this.
Well, first thing is, it's at Brown County Dragway.
Oh, that's what I meant. Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah,
but,
thank you.
I mean, it's really not a really long story. I mean, if we go back, I think it's 2018, and I already know Nick Taylor, right? So Nick Taylor, a good buddy of mine, him and a few other guys actually threw the first War in the Woods. It wasn't me. And it was kind of a thrown together deal, like last minute when Streetcar Takeover was in Indy. I actually raced at it, and we had no lights on the track. So, well, let me start with this. I mean, we just purchased Brown County Dragway, so we own the track now too. But
oh, congratulations, man!
Well, thank you. Yeah. So the track, I always kid around and tell people this: I bought the biggest piece of shit track in the country, right? But you cannot duplicate what Brown County has to offer. And when I say that about it, nobody loves the track more than me. But I mean, we have no lights. We have no paved parking. We have no permanent restrooms. I mean, and this place has been operating, since the 70s. So you get what I'm saying. I mean, this is not a place where, you're just, a lot of guys probably don't want to race there. The track is narrow. There's grass between the lanes. I mean, it's bumpy. It's sketchy. We've done some things to upgrade. But anyway, back to the story. So
I love everything you just said is like a checklist for badass drag races.
Exactly.
Like I hate to say it, and I know everybody wants to be safe, and I get it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we can all, like, everybody can have their opinion about these things, but the fact remains there's a market for this type of racing, and
Sure.
it's exciting, and the product that it creates is phenomenal. I mean, just watching the videos are unbelievable. I mean, what did we get? Like 100 highlight videos from that race alone.
Oh,
so, I mean, everything you talked about, it makes it such a badass event.
Yeah. So anyway, Nick had that race, and it was a Friday night race, started like 11 o'clock at night, if I remember correctly, but we had no lights on the track. So we raced in the dark. I think there was one light at the very end of the track, so you could see the return road, and we ended up having a really bad wreck down there. So at that time, there was no, like, I'm trying to remember here, from probably 500 feet on, there was no guardrails or retaining wall or nothing on the big end of the track. Well, another guy I know in an S10 got loose, got in the grass. There was dew, lost it, and went into the woods. And
I saw that video of that. Yeah.
1320 had that video. So, that ended the race that night. I think we were in the third round when that happened. But anyway, that's how it basically started, right? And then the following year, there was nothing, right? Well, then a good friend of mine, Billy Fields, local guy here in Shelbyville, Indiana, that is a famous painter, one of the best painters there is. His mom owned Brown County Drag Strip for over 20 years. And I got a phone call one day from Billy that said, "Hey, Mom wants to have lunch with you and wants to talk to you about putting a race on." And I'm like, now a little background on myself. I've only been drag racing for like 9-10 years. Prior to that, I raced nitro injected hill climb bikes professionally.
Oh, wow.
So I came from a totally different thing. But the reason I'm telling you that is because I used to promote a big hill climb. So I do have
Mike's nitro injected hill climb motorcycle. I won't get on a 600 Honda, and he's riding nitro inject. I just saw Mike's reaction in the green room, and I had to throw him in here. Go ahead.
Like steel chain tires and everything. Like, I mean, I raced in Europe, all over the world, and anyway.
It makes sense. I mean, the War in the Woods, it kind of has that vibe. It makes sense. It translates.
So but now you're going to really be like, wow, this story's crazy. So I put a race on that was called the Nashville Nitro Nationals, East versus West, and it was in Nashville, Indiana, literally 15 minutes from the drag strip at an old ski resort. And we did that for 7 or 8 years. And the premise of that race was hill climbing had like 2 series, a West Coast and kind of an East Coast. And I was the first guy to bring the West and the East Coast together. And so I had, I had some promoting experience. I wouldn't call myself, I'm nobody special or, nothing like that. But anyway, so fast forward, I get a call from Billy to have lunch with his mom. Now, if you knew Sandy, a lot of people thought Sandy was grumpy and right? Well, I got along great with Sandy, and Sandy and I had a great business relationship when we started the event. So I had another friend, really good friend named John Molina, who owned Molina Speedworks, a nitrous company. And John's shop is literally 10 minutes down the road from mine. And so when they asked me about that, I says, if I'm going to do that, I'm pretty busy with business stuff. I'm going to ask John if he wants to help out, right? And John, everybody has a different personality. John's just an awesome guy to deal with people. John's one of them people that if you start talking to him, you want to keep talking to him. You know what I'm saying? And
100%.
He had a lot of relationships in the industry. And I was like, I know all the racers, I got a lot of connections. And John would just be a great guy to handle getting sponsors and just stuff like that. So John agreed to do it, and we made a deal with Sandy, and we had our first race. And I'm going to say we had 700 or 800 spectators, maybe low 30s car count, like in small tire. and we had and it was a pretty good little race. I mean, nothing. It was very small, right? Anyway, like a week after the race, we were sitting in my shop one evening and just out there talking. And I told John, I says, I really think this could be something huge, man. I mean, I think it really could. And he just like laughed at me. And I said, no, I'm serious. Like, I feel like a lot of the races in the no prep, especially at that time, were just $100 hat races. Somebody makes a Facebook post, you all meet here. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't organized. Nobody was putting any real effort into promoting. Nobody was getting big purses up. I mean, so on and so forth. And anyway, I mean, he kind of blew me off, and I was like, no, I'm serious, man. I'm like, if we're going to do this, let's try to make something out of it. Let's operate it as a business, and let's get out here and let's do something that nobody else has done, and so we started working on it. Well, then, unfortunately, John got COVID and passed away. Yeah,
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah,
that's not where I was expecting this story to go.
Yeah,
I thought, okay, there's about to be a big
Yeah, so that was pretty tough, man. I mean, he's a close friend, and just I mean, but where the race is now, I mean, that dude would be so stoked you just can't even imagine. I mean,
I'm sure he's proud of
that. So at that point, I'm like, well, we got to keep doing it, and we're going to keep doing it, and we're just going to work harder at it. And then I have a younger sister and a younger brother, and my sister, who kind of helps part-time at my business, got super involved and kind of picked up, where John was and helped a lot. And then, I mean, we just worked our asses off, and you'll see when you experience it. I'm a very humble guy. I mean, but I can tell you guys stories for days that would blow your mind. I mean, let me give you one example.
Please. I mean, that's what we're here for, baby. Yeah. Story time.
I had a 50-some-year-old woman. This was probably last year. This one always sticks out in my head. That called me with some questions about the event, and she said, hey, I've been going to the U.S. Nationals for 28 years. My dad and my brother both raised super stock or something, right? She goes, we came to War in the Woods last year, and she goes, the U.S. Nationals isn't even in the same zip code as that event. I mean, that's real world. That's real world. I mean, that's one person. I'm not.
Dude, I get it, man. I mean, I got goosebumps again because I just think that's this deal is special, and you have to be mindful of where you're looking. Like
exactly.
The example I like to use is like if you're cooking a steak on the grill, and if you want to know if it's done, you got to shove that thermometer thing well into the center of the son of a bitch, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of times people in drag racing want to take the temperature of the sport, but you've got to look on the edges too. You know what I mean? Because this thing's scalding hot on some of the edges, on the fringes, and maybe that thing in the middle isn't quite warm enough or isn't done, but there's a lot of really hot sections of the sport. I mean, for me, that's like a comment from a fan that you can hang your hat on, Jeff.
Oh, yeah.
It's a personal connection too. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
They felt, welcomed and embraced or whatever at that event, which is hard to do at a U.S. Nationals. But you talked about how you got here in the formation of the event and the evolution. What's next? What are you looking to do next year? What's how does this thing continue,
man?
Or does it get too big? Are you trying to keep it what it is?
Oh, this is a 365-day-a-year job right now, and I'm not college educated. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I've been in business for myself for over 30 years, and I knew from the get-go that I'm going to grow it, and as it grows, all the problems come along with it, and if you're not ahead of them, you're committing business suicide. And I mean, when I say that, I mean, I'll tell you things I have nightmares about. 1,000 people, some of which drove 24 hours or flew in from Australia. We have spectators
we're getting a ton of
all
comments
over the world.
In the comments, a guy just says he drove 16 and a half hours to the event.
Yeah, I mean, we've had spectators from the UK, Germany.
Yeah,
Australia.
We got one in the comments.
Yeah, we had one. We had two people from Austria at this event. I mean, they come from everywhere. So I have nightmares before about having lines of cars outside the gate and people that drove 20 hours and I can't get them into the event, so the things that like little things like being able to feed these people. This is not like a normal drag race. If we open the gates at 9 a.m, by 10, there's 1,200 people in there and we're not racing for 8 hours. You know what I mean? So, I mean, some of these people are at the event for 16 hours. You know what I mean? So running out of food's a problem. We don't have permanent bathrooms.
Those are some of the issues that we faced also, is feeding people. It's the stuff you don't think about. You think about the racing, you think about all the big stuff, and then it's the little stuff like food trucks and things like
bathrooms.
that.
Bathrooms are a huge one.
Yeah.
And knowing how to plan that and where to place them. And
trash. I mean,
trash is a huge one.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, let me tell you one other one that this one will really hit you in the heart. Okay. So, last September, we have 2 races a year only, one in the spring, one in the fall. In the fall event last year, a buddy of mine, Josh Robinson, who has a channel, Ohio Grudge Racing, came up and said, "Hey, Jeff, I got a gentleman that needs to talk to you for a second." I go, "Okay, no problem." I was walking off the stage and I went over and he introduced himself and he said, "Hey, you know, I'm from Canada. I'm a big fan. We've been to the last 4 War in the Woods. My daughter is the hugest fan, 14-year-old daughter." He's like, she loves Billy Hoskinson. She loves everything about this. And she was just killed in a car wreck. He says, "Do you mind if I sprinkle some of her ashes down by the finish line?" I mean, you know, I always tell people this, you know, we put the race on, but the reach this race has, I can't even wrap my head around. You know what I mean? I have people call me and ask me, "Man, what's the best place to stay?" It's me and my husband's 30th wedding anniversary, and we're going to spend it at War in the Woods. So, I mean, you know, one stigma I think that gets attached to this, you know, backwoods grassroots racing is it's a bunch of hillbillies. That's not the fact. That's not the case. I mean, you know, this is all walks of life. I mean, this and these are hardcore fans. I mean, you know, like you have that in the NHRA. You know, everybody knows the John Force. They like John Force or they like Schumacher or this or that. At War in the Woods, the fans got their favorites, and you know it. You know, so I mean, you know, I'm kind of weird about talking about it because I don't like to sound like I'm bragging because I'm a very humble person.
No, we know that.
I like to try to explain like what I think the experience is. You know what I mean? But anyway, so you said moving forward. So let's go back to the start. Like, so what I told John was, I says, you know, we got to do something different, man. We got to make it more than a drag race. It's got to be, you know what I'm saying? It has 100%. To be just more than cars going.
It's got to be an event.
It's got to be an event. You know, so I brought in a guy, Jamie Deere, which once you see him, once you come to the event and hear him, he's my announcer. Now, the backstory on Jamie Deere is when I used to race motorcycles, I owned a machine shop business and I had a pit bike track behind my machine shop that we used to have races on that were huge. So through a friend of a friend, I mean, I had an announcer and I had permanent lights on it, the whole 9 yards. I met Jamie Deere because he came to announce a pit bike race one night, right? The dude is born to announce racing. I mean, he's the greatest announcer I've ever heard, and I've been racing for 40 plus years. I mean, the guy was born to do it, right? So immediately I made Jamie come announce the event, okay? So he's been with me since day one, and he's a big part of the event. And we have a badass sound system. There's music rocking the whole time. You know, we did a deal where every person that buys a ticket to come through the gate gets raffle tickets that go into a bucket, and we give free stuff out to people all night long at the event. You know, just little things like that. I mean, we got, you know, food vendors that are phenomenal. We got a lemonade guy there that is famous from the event. I mean, the lemonade is just, you know, I mean,
Tom Gunner told me about it. Like Tom Gunner literally told me.
I mean, it's crazy, right? So anyway, so, you know, it just went like that. And now it just evolved into way more than a drag race. And then, I mean, at the race last weekend, the opening ceremony, the way we do it now, we have so many cars and stuff, is we start at 3 p.m. It used to never start until dusk. I'm hugely against racing in the daytime. I think it should be illegal, you know, but I'm a street racer. You know what I mean? I'm used to
drag radio shit. Right
I'm used to drivers meeting at midnight and, you know, in some gas station parking lot. But anyway, We start at 3 now, and then, like we might start with True Street, hard tire. We got several classes, but then like at 7:30, we go into first round of small tire. And before that, we play the national anthem. And Jason Terrell from 10 Soldiers, a good friend of mine, came up and says the prayer. And, there was 6,000 plus spectators there, and it was standing room only. And you could hear a pin drop in that place. I mean, I can't even, there's videos of it out there all over Facebook, but, it's really special, man. It's just, I always tell people this, if you're a drag racing fan, you're doing yourself a disservice of not coming once. And I'm not trying to sell a ticket. I'm saying for you real hardcore fans, you got to come experience it one time, and, so, that's basically where
what you're talking about to me, though, is an example of how special this entire community is.
Yeah.
Because I remember being at one of Donald Long's events. I think it was like Lights Out. It's been many moons ago. And John Ford III, longtime drag illustrated photographer and a legend out here, we were sitting down, and I remember there was like, that crowd, the crowd at races like that, extremely diverse. Every race, creed, color is represented. There's people everywhere. And we had a similar moment where the national anthem started and everyone stood up. Everyone took their hat off. Everyone looked toward the flag.
Exactly.
Everyone was quiet. They did a prayer. Everybody closed their eyes and bowed their head. And it was people that were like tabling all these other grievances and all this other stuff that happens in the world and all these things that we can argue about. And it's just, and embrace our common passion, our common interest. And I think that what you're talking about there is going beyond. That's where we need to continue to push this sport and continue to be proud. Like, to be a little contrary, like we almost need guys like you, Jeff, to be more braggadocious.
Mm-hmm.
I challenge people all the time in this community. We have to be a little more proud of what is going on here. I mean, to your point about people traveling from around the globe to come to Brown County, right, to go drag racing, to watch a drag race. When we experience the same thing at World Series, like I'll have people walk up that said they came from London and they're spending the week, or they came from Australia and they're spending the week, and all this stuff. And it's going, it's a magical thing that we have here.
Yeah.
And we better be a little more proud of it. And we better lean into this because it is special. And there's no telling where this deal's headed. I mean, I will argue it till I'm blue in the face that drag racing is the great American motorsport, especially the way you guys do it, where it's heads up, first one to the finish line wins. It's easy to digest. It happens fast. It's everything the world wants in this day and age. And if we can just be a little more proud about it and a little bit more loud or outspoken about the magic and the special thing that's happening in this community, maybe we can get some more folks out. I mean, but before we let you go, Jeff, and I appreciate you being so gracious with your time, but I'm just curious, like, what is the challenge of how hard is it, or how much pressure do you feel to maintain that level of that energy that you're talking about? Is it something where you feel like the genie's out and now the magic will continue, or what challenge?
Or if it gets too big, it's going to lose that vibe that you were talking about. And I mean, that's
I'm trying to buy land. I mean, it's very, I mean, two things. One is this, it's very overwhelming because it's almost impossible to get people to work the event because they want to watch, you know what I mean? Like I'm struggle with that. So, without my sister and her husband, and I mean, we literally work 20 hours a day. I mean, we're parking car. I race at the event. You know what I mean? I even race, which is probably ignorant, but anyway, I mean, I always say this with other stuff, even my current business, like when I first started it, we were just booming, and I'm like, man, this has got to level out sometime. Right. And it doesn't. And I think now we're at the point with War in the Woods where this train ain't slowing down. I mean, it's just not, you know what I mean? So everything from here forward is just doing as good a job as we can to make sure I can give the spectators what they want, honestly. You know what I mean? It's a business. I run it like one. I think that for the work that we put in, we should be, I do want to make money from it. And we got bills to pay like everybody else, but it's also, another thing is the reason we got the track is because I wanted to ensure the longevity of the race. You know what I mean? And I mean, like, my poor sister Julie would just be devastated if we couldn't have the race again. You know, and when somebody else owns the track and you're leasing or you're doing this, it's the only way you control your own destiny is to own it. So, you know, we made that happen, which is a big deal. And I just see it getting bigger and better. And you know, and now it's such a prestigious thing to win the event. You know what I mean? That's crazy. And I mean, you know, another thing that's really neat story to tell is, you know, when we first started, it's like, you know, poor John's making phone calls to the company and like, we're getting 3 beer koozies and 2 t-shirts, you know, sponsorship. Right. And now it's you know, companies like Strange and Fuel Tech, I mean, are, you know, they tell me it's the best bang for their buck, period. I mean, you know, they are heavily involved in War in the Woods and Brown County Dragway, and they're, you know, their vendors there. Vendor row is huge. I mean, you know, it's right now, man, it's the place to be. You know what I'm saying? And I hope it goes on forever. I can't guarantee anything, but you know, hey, if anybody's looking to get employed, I'm hiring.
we'll do our level best to help you on that end. And I'm curious, 2 last things quickly. Just first and foremost, I just want to give you some kudos because you make a valid point there that we've discussed in the past on the pages of Drag Illustrated here on this program, that it is important, like the most important thing in the sport of drag racing is successful promoters. A lot of times people don't want to hear that, but that is a reality, is that we need tracks to be successful. We need promoters to be successful, because otherwise there's no incentive to continue doing this. Like, we all go into these things with the best of intentions, full of piss and vinegar, ready to work ourselves into the ground. But there comes a time when it's got to generate some sort of positive impact on your life, better than a fun weekend.
There's a big argument going on today on Facebook about that, and I've been saying this for 6 years. It's very simple. Okay, it's real easy for promoters to be like, oh, I just want a place for our buddies to be able to race, right? Well, racetracks have bills and property taxes and insurance and ambulance fees and right? They need to make money to stay open so our grandkids have a drag strip to race at, okay? So you're not doing a service by throwing a half-ass race and putting no effort into it, okay? Promoters, get off your ass, do your job, okay, and make drag strips some money. They've been closing up all over the country.
And by owning the track, you know that now. You're seeing both sides of it. We work closely with Vic at Bradenton, and getting that side of it helps us be better promoters as well. So yeah, when you see both sides of it like that, that starts to make sense. You can't just,
you know, I knew it when I was leasing the track. I wanted them to make money. I was very generous with the way we did it, and we always did it off a percentage of the gate. The better my race was, the more money they made. But, you know, that's what kept the gate swinging open. That's what ensured that my event could continue to go on year after year, you know, and you know, that's a big argument going on. But, you know, I'm kind of a black and white person. And to be brutally honest, the guys that are saying that are the ones that are killing drag strips all over the country. That's
I mean, the thing that I find very interesting is in this new age that we live in of all this technology and social media, blah, 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 blah. These are new tools, but it doesn't mean that old tools stopped working. Like, just because you have a power drill, a cordless drill, doesn't mean that your screwdriver, that Phillips screwdriver in your toolbox drawer, is junk now.
Yeah.
There's jobs for it too, you know? And I think that sometimes people think, oh, well, there's Facebook. We got social media. We don't need to go beat the streets. We don't need to go hand out tickets. We don't need to buy radio ads. We don't need to go ingrain ourselves in the community. Yes, you do. You've got to do those things and use the new tools that are available. You have to do as much of it as you can, and you got to do a little bit of all of it. So kudos to you for recognizing that, because I think that is something. I mean, I remember how much time that I've spent. I mean, I probably couldn't calculate how many hours of my life have been spent calling racers. Hey man, just checking in on you. You need anything? You know, you still planning on coming? We got your spot. You know, and I look around our space right now, and I don't think that much of that happens. I think there's a lot of big gaps between promoters or track owners and their client base, their racer base, and we've got to tighten that up and recognize that it's just like any other small business. You got to welcome people in. You got to give them reasons to come back. I mean, it's a real thing, Jeff, and I give you a tremendous amount of kudos for what you've built. I can't wait to be there next year. And just seriously, man, you deserve your moment in the sun, and I really appreciate you taking the time on a Wednesday afternoon to come talk shop with us, dude. I have genuinely enjoyed this. We need to do this again soon.
Sure.
Will War in the Woods remain a single event a year? Is that
two events a year? One in the spring, one in the fall.
2 a year.
September 13th and 14th is the next one. Hey,
okay.
let me put one shameless plug out. We
Please.
also do an event called Gangsters Paradise, which is June 28th and 29th, coming up here in 3 weeks. And that's an invite-only race, so it's like 64 of the baddest small tire cars in the country. And what we do there is it's a 2-day race, 2 separate races. We run a whole race Friday night and a whole race Saturday night. So it's at Wagler Motorsports Park. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that venue, but it's an awesome facility. It's actually owned by Jeremy Wagler from Wagler Competition Engines, the diesel guy.
Yeah,
that
Lyons, Indiana.
Yeah, Lyons, Indiana. You know, hey, the reason I'm doing that is really more, that's an awesome facility, and come out and support it, man. Help that drag strip do good like the rest of them. And when you all come out to War in the Woods, you're going to get the VIP treatment. And hey, we don't half-ass it. You know what I mean?
I can't wait, man.
Yeah. Sounds like we need to be at the next one.
Yeah,
for sure.
We'll be at the next one. It sounds like we'll see you in September, Jeff. Thanks a bunch, dude. Seriously, congrats on all your success. Shout out to your sister, Julie, and everybody else involved. I want to talk about your announcer because now you've piqued my curiosity. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up. Jeff Thomas, War in the Woods.
Thanks guys.
Jeff.
Appreciate it.
Buddy.
All
Appreciate it, man. We lost him. Well, hey, Mike, real quick before we dive into the next topic of conversation here, I do want to take a quick second and remind everybody that each and every episode of the Wes Buck Show is brought to you by our friends at Redline Synthetic Oils. Redline has a reputation with racers and hardcore enthusiasts for creating products that perform and protect better than any on the market, and they've been doing it since 1979. Whether it's your race car, your tow rig, your motorcycle, or your lawnmower, when you think about lubricants, you need to think about Redline. Just topped off the old Tahoe, my wife's Tahoe, out in the driveway with some fresh Redline this morning. Huge shout out to Mark Beatty and the whole gang at Redline for all they do for the sport of drag racing. I mean, selfishly, we appreciate all of the support they provide us here at Drag Illustrated, but I'm blown away by the impact they've made in the sport overall. So kudos to them. And Mike, we got some home cooking about to come up, I think.
Yeah, man. We're gonna swing the pendulum again.
Is this
let's go straight from John Force to War in the Woods to
the NHRA Pro Mod,
some highly competitive, high technical pro mod racing.
We don't spend enough time bragging about this, Mike, because nobody else does this, and it's something I think it's so integral to the growth of our sport is to tear these walls down. I mean, it's important that names like John Force, Jeff Thomas, and Justin Elk are mentioned in Justin Elks is mentioned in the same breath. I mean, that is an important thing. I mean, a high tide lifts all boats. And I think that we've got to get a little bit more, lean into this more. And again, I'm proud of it. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, let's give it up for the man of the hour, fresh off an incredible performance at the NHRA New England Nationals, calling the shots, turning the screws on Mason Wright's Modern Racing Elite Motorsports Pro Mod Camaro, the one, the only Justin Elks. What's up, Justin? Oh, shit. No sound. You're muted. Click unmute. Yeah.
Is he muted?
Uh-oh. He looks so good, too.
You got me? Try it now. No.
Nope. Here. Leave and come back in, Justin. I'm going to kick him from studio, and we'll have him come right back. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I did a hell of a job there on that intro. I was really proud of that intro.
I want you to do that one again.
Stumble, nothing. Didn't miss a beat.
Do it again.
And then the muted person. It's just for those listening along and not watching, we got a great look of Justin. He looks sharp, got a hat on, got a little bit of 5 o'clock shadow,
branded.
got
Yep,
modern racing polo on. I think that was probably Nike or Under Armour, you know?
Here we go. We'll try it again now.
Greg Decker's challenging me to here real quick. Let's add him. Can we hear you, Justin?
Can you hear me now?
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
Don't say anything. Here, I'm going to remove him. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, fresh off a dominating performance as the crew chief on the Elite Motorsports Modern Racing Pro Mod Camaro at the NHRA New England Nationals, the one, the only, Justin Elkes.
Hey guys, how you doing?
There we go. Okay,
Yeah,
man. Woo, there we go.
Technology.
We did the intro. It was too good.
Screw it. We'll do it. I had to do it again, man. And I just want to, man, I was so excited for you guys. Justin, for those that don't know, I've known Justin for almost 20 years. We met in like 07, right about the time, not too long after, or perhaps maybe 08, maybe a little after I met Mike. And it's crazy to think how it's just this crazy drag racing life we live, right?
Overseas,
Justin, I mean,
right? It was the overseas deal.
Well, I think I was living in a little $300 a month apartment in Kirksville, Missouri. And I remember Justin and I had been tasked with organizing a pro mod operation for Sheikh Khalid Al Thani of Al Anabi Racing.
Yeah, I was like late 20s.
Yeah.
Just got married, had my first son, and then got the job with Al Anabi. I was working at Wilson for, at that point, almost 10 years. And they came and made me an offer that I was like, you mean I can get paid to go racing? Okay. Because up to that point, I had done some work with KB Racing and Pro Stock. We had our own mountain motor car, and I raced with Brandon Schweitzer for a long time. But everything was basically just me going to the racetrack any chance I could. And man, if someone bought me dinner at the end of the night, that was awesome.
Isn't that crazy how it works though? Because
that's actually one of the deals I forget about is the Wilson Manifolds car back in the ADRL days.
Yes,
you know, that deal was dominant in those days.
A Don Ness car. So
Yes.
like, let's take.
Yes.
Shout out to the great one real quick, Don Ness Racecraft. And one of my favorite things about that Wilson Manifolds car was the chassis was white.
Yeah, I was going to say it had the
It
white
was.
chassis.
It was.
Why
So,
was that a Wilson
no,
thing?
that
Keith
was
Wilson thing?
that was a Billy Dingman thing.
Okay.
And the reason he had a philosophy behind it. So he came from road racing and cup racing. He always had Valvoline as a sponsor, and all his cars had white chassis. And the reason he said he had a white chassis is because you had to clean it or it looked like hell. And when you clean, you find cracks and you find problems. So he painted all his chassis white to make us clean them.
I thought it was so you could identify cracks.
No,
or potential
it was
issues.
literally so that we had to clean the cars and things would not be overlooked, because he also wanted his stuff pristine.
Let's give it up for Billy Dingman.
Yeah.
I mean, I love this approach.
You used to see that a little bit more. And like, I can remember a few of my dad's first cars had like a lighter powder coat on it, but now everything is pretty much
black,
the dark gray,
black,
graphite
dark gray.
color.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of miss the white chassis thing. That was one of my favorite cars. Matt Hartford drove it and had a tremendous amount of success in that car. Whatever happened to that thing? Is that car? I mean, I'm sure it's still around somewhere.
I'm sure it's around somewhere. When Billy stopped racing, I think somebody bought it in New York somewhere, and it just kind of floated around. It's still around. I think I've seen it places. I mean, no matter what color you paint the body, you're not going to miss the white chassis.
No, you're not going to miss that white chassis.
No.
I miss seeing it at the racetrack. I would notice it every single time, man. But
the photos, the flash photos at night, it was like the chassis stood out more than the car itself.
You can see the driver's eyes and then the chassis.
Yeah, when we did the flat black paint scheme.
Oh yeah,
it really.
Oh yeah, that's a major contrast.
Yeah,
yeah.
But let's talk about this. Jim Parks brings up a good point here. He was kind of picking on your audio issues, but winning races in Pro Mod in multiple combinations, turbo. You've dabbled in nitrous, and then of course this weekend one with a supercharged car.
Screw blowers, roots blowers, pro chargers,
a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think it kind of gets overlooked. I know, obviously Mason Wright's first win, it's huge. We'll talk about Mason, but just having experience, not only in pro stock chassis tuning, but with all these different combinations, that kind of makes you uniquely positioned over there in NHRA Pro Mod. And I mean, is that kind of, you're seeing the fruits of that?
Yeah, I think, I've always been a believer that the more you can get your hands on different power riders, different types of racing, it always brings something to the table. You always take something from what you've done in the past, whether it's a nitrous car or a pro charger car or a turbo car, or even road race stuff that I've done in the past when I was at Wilson. I think a little bit, you never forget your past and you learn. And I always tell people all the time, people say, well, how do you know how to tune so much stuff? How have you got where you are now? And I'm always like, I'm just really good at remembering what not to do.
No, but it is interesting. And I've pointed at multiple crew chiefs over the years that have had success with a multitude of combinations and having that frame, that depth, I guess, of reference information, that you've seen all these different configurations, and you have to believe that while maybe not all of it's applicable, like you said, you can learn what doesn't work. Like, we know that doesn't work over here. We've learned that lesson, and you can apply it to the next project. I think of Billy Stocklin. He was one of the few guys that I identified as someone who had been successful with a multitude of different combinations. I mean, you think about guys like Frank Manzo specializes in the screw blown deal, and for the longest time really had no interest in the drivetrain because he was a clutch guy, right? And he didn't want to, no sense in learning a new skill late in your career, whatever. He ultimately did, and I think is very comfortable with a converter drive at this point. But it just kind of speaks to the fact that guys that are super well-rounded or have dabbled in a lot of things are kind of few and far between. So yeah, I think it's neat that you've had success with all of these different combinations. One of the questions that I had for you, and I think we've talked about this over cocktails before, is for the longest time, it felt like Pro Stock was invading Pro Mod, and there was like people such as yourselves, Jeff Purley, Larry Morgan, the list goes on. I mean, there's been a lot of different guys that kind of operated in the Pro Stock space that then started to get involved in the fast door slammer, the Pro Mod space. And we've seen some of it translate, some of it not. And I'm just curious, like, Pro Mod used to be like Pro Stock ultimate efficiency, right? If you're talking on a scale of 100, you're trying to make a 97, 8, 9% efficient run, like as close to, you have very little to work with, gear ratio, clutch weight. I mean, just a little bit of timing, not a ton of stuff that you can do with the 500-inch naturally aspirated engine, fuel injected. Then going into Pro Mod, it used to be like just getting this thing under the finish line under power was victory. Like you know what I mean? Like just not hitting both
or you've got more power than you need. So it's like, we don't have to be efficient. We can just muscle this thing down through here. But like,
as it has evolved, right? I mean, it is a much more complicated thing where that expectation is so much higher to make those high efficiency, perfect runs, the best that it could possibly be made, especially as competitive as it is right now. I mean, I'm just curious, like, what have you learned, talking about some of the things that you can't do or learn not to do in your progress from the Pro Stock world into really being kind of one of the primary movers and shakers in the Pro Mod fast door slammer space right now, Justin?
Well, probably one of the biggest things that I would say people struggle with a little bit, and I did, and had to kind of learn really quickly, going from Pro Stock type racing to Pro Mod, is just respecting the power. Everything that you learn in Pro Stock applies to Pro Mod, 100%. But everything is magnified, right? Like the power at the flick of a switch or the move of a timing map, you can just smoke the tire. And in Pro Stock, the only way you're smoking the tire is if it's all wadded up and it shakes, right? But all the suspension stuff, gear ratios, even some of the stuff in the clutch applies to the converters. So, all that helps. I think the biggest thing for people going from Pro Stock crew chief wise to Pro Mod is respecting the power. I was Pro Stock through and through for forever. And really, until I started dabbling with the Pro Mods, I didn't really, not that I didn't give them a lot of respect, I just didn't pay attention to them very much because the Pro Stock world is kind of closed off a little bit, right? Like they the earth rotates on their axis a little bit, and some people might get mad at me for saying that, but I lived that world, so I know that's the way it is. And for me, once I got exposed to some of the Pro Mod stuff, I was really intrigued just by how fertile it still was, how undeveloped it was. And I'm talking more like in the 2007, 2008, 9, like it was raw, right? It was like you guys said, it was just getting the car to the other end of the racetrack. Fast forward 15 years later, and these cars are being tuned like Pro Stock cars now. We're making very, very small changes run to run with big gains. No longer are you making these big, massive moves to see it pick up performance. They're very well refined from front to back, engine tune-up, converters, ratios, shifting, the driver, right? How the driver is staging the cars matters now, how much heat's in the torque converter. And the people who have really risen to the top and done well, won races, won championships in Pro Mod, have started to adopt some of those same processes that we had 15 years ago in Pro Stock.
It's really interesting to me because I remember when I was like really, I think I fell in love with Pro Modified in 1993. If I remember correctly, it was 93, but it was the weekend that Carl Moyer reopened the all new Eddyville Raceway Park in Iowa. And he had booked in like a pretty sizable Pro Mod show. Mike, your dad was there. You were probably there.
I was not there, but I had seen pictures and they did like a display at Carl's dealership and stuff. It looked pretty badass.
It was spectacular. And I remember just my dad hated it because, to your point, Justin, dyed in the wool pro stock guy. I mean, he couldn't stop bagging on these pro. Look at that picnic table wing. What are they going to do? Serve lunch on that thing? I wouldn't have a car with a wing on that if they paid me. Wes, I'd need 2 of those things. Oh, yeah. Why, Dad? Why would you need 2 pro mods? One to take a shit on and the other to cover it up with. It's like, oh, my God, Dad. I mean, he hated it. Right. Yeah. And so then I got kind of like, obviously the magazine, all this different stuff. And we did some pro mod races when I was running the track, but fast forward to that window you're talking about, that 06, 7, 8, like there's some momentum. There's something definitely happening, but it was still very rudimentary because I know Mike can tell some stories about this, but that was when guys, ran a set of valve springs all season.
Yes.
Right. Didn't work on the engine unless it was hurt. Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
it was a problem when you had the heads off. And a lot of that was the Alanabi deal also bringing in, Rear Morrison. We talked about that, bringing that into the nitrous game, into the nitrous engine deal, and kind of upping that.
Justin was a part of that.
Yeah, Justin was a part of it. So, I mean, that to me, at least from our viewpoint, because we were kind of on the outside looking in, it still had the rudimentary approach and the rudimentary equipment at that time. That was you saw that evolution, the lightweight cars, the no rules of ADRL. A lot of that stuff really opened it up for some of this creative thinking that I think has carried on.
Well, and it's like Justin's saying, it's that it evolved really fast. And I think, not quite like a tune-up on a race car, but it did feel like the flick of a switch because it felt like there was, if I went through like the chronicling pro modified history, there is quite definitively pre-Alanabi and post. Quite definitive. There's a mark on there.
Alanabi raised the bar when they came in. Not only, even in Top Fuel and Funny Car, right? When they did the Alan Johnson deal, like that elevated the game, right? The money that was spent, the money that Alanabi brought into Pro Mod with ADRL prior to him, having him and I guess he owned part of it. Everybody knows that prior to PDRA, but prior to even that, when he was just racing it, right? And it was Manzo and Tim and Kim Richards came into Pro Mod. I mean, that
Tim McCamus is at every race, serving as his chassis guy.
I mean, it just it elevated everything, right? It made everybody spend more money. It made everybody develop and push harder, test harder, hire crew chiefs, dedicated crew chiefs, and it really
at that time, crew chief was like grandpa or your dad, right?
Or the driver themselves.
My dad, Jim, he's right there. That's him.
Well, I know, like when I got hired with Alanabi. And this is no joke. When I got hired, my job, what I was told, was to make the car go straight. That's it.
That's it.
Yeah. So because when I got hired, I was first tasked to work with Frank Manzo, Tim and Kim Richards, and they were Funny Car, Top Fuel guys. I mean, the trailer would lean on one side. I would joke because we had so many head gaskets and clutch. We were running a clutch back then in the Pro Mod, so floaters and all that. I mean, they tuned it like a Funny Car, a fuel car, and all I was allowed to do was look at suspension. And the only time I could really speak up is if the car went left or right, make it go.
Well, and that kind of speaks to your evolution, like we've talked about, where you're tuning the full deal now. I mean, I know you guys get the power from Janus lately, but you've used all these power adders, different engine combinations, but you're kind of a go-to. I think people call you for obviously chassis setup, but for a little bit of everything now, or they come to your business, Modern Racing, as kind of a one-stop shop, right? Like if someone's building a new car or needs an update or needs something fixed on their car, it's like they drop it off at Modern and then just say, fix it, make it right. And they'll pick it up. And then they rely on you to kind of also guide them as they kind of find their way back.
I like this phrase, turnkey. That's what turnkey. Justin Elkes does. Yeah. He'll make your car turnkey. And I think that's a cool, because that has not existed.
No,
in our sport.
It's a rare deal. That's what I was going to say. Talk a little bit about that and how that business has grown, or your business has grown. Because you've got, you've got like a couple dozen people that work there now, and they're doing each facet, wiring, chassis, the whole deal, fabrication. So like, how has that grown and how has that translated to your on-track performance?
Well, I mean, it absolutely helps the on-track performance. One thing in Pro Mod, that back to what Wes asked earlier, kind of the differences in what we take from Pro Stock is Pro Stock, you have an engine tuner, you have a chassis tuner, you have a clutch guy, and they all kind of work together. In Pro Mod, like that, one guy has to be the engine, the chassis, and the power adder. Like he has to tune everything because it all has to work together. And that's probably one of the biggest differences in Pro Stock versus Pro Mod. But business-wise, modern racing, we started it in 2017. Didn't even have a shop. I was just doing consulting for some Pro Stock teams, had come off the road crew chiefing, didn't really know the direction I wanted to go with modern racing. And I was doing some consulting with Pro Mod teams. I was doing some consulting with Pro Stock teams, and everything was going smooth. Well, then I was getting asked to, hey, can you come, look at this electrical, look at this data. Can you wire this car? Can you help? And it just started getting a little bit busier. And I started tapping into some of my resources, guys that were working at night, some people I worked with in the past. And next thing you know, I had a group that was kind of coming at night, and I had a 1,500 square foot shop. And we started working on some stuff. Well, then the next thing you know, it's like, I need more room. Oh my gosh, look how busy we are. And really what kind of opened modern racing up was when Pat Busey asked me to take on Danny Sorrow's program in 2018, I think it was. And I really wanted to kind of get a program of my own and kind of run it like my own. And Danny signed up and let us keep his car. So my first, I hired Mike Earl, who we've been buddies forever, racing Pro Stock. And I was like, come on, let's go racing. We're going to run PDRA. We'll see what this is all about with this nitrous car. And UC, he had just a stock UC motor, 959 back then, old Randy Weatherford car. And the year before, he had crashed it. He had never raced anything. And from the start of the season that we took it over to the end of the season, like we could barely get through the burnout with him because he was just a green driver, but he was a great student, did really well. By the end of the year, we set the record, won a race. We won the blower versus nitrous thing. So we were running really good. And I was like, hey, this is kind of fun, this Pro Mod thing. Yeah. And it seemed like we got a lot of notoriety for that. For the Danny Sorrow thing. And next thing you know, all these people wanted us to work on their Pro Mod, set this up. Hey, can you consult? So here we go, right?
Snowball effect.
It just snowballed. And really, none of this where we're at today was a plan. Never sat down and said, this is what I want to do. This is almost opposite of what I said I wanted to do. I was like, I don't want anything too big. I don't want too many people. Now we got 30,000 square feet and 25 full-time employees. But I wouldn't change it for the world. Everything's great. Look, I get to get up every morning and work on race cars and help people achieve their dreams. Like, how could that be bad, right?
And I tell you, it's hard to put, and I'm not like trying to impact your pricing here. I'm probably going to have somebody send me a mean text that Justin's going to run up their bill. But it's like, you can't really put a price tag on that, like knowing the car is going to start. Like it's just, and I think that I know, having spent my entire life in drag racing, I can't tell you how many friends, close personal friends, family members that I've had find themselves kind of in chassis shop jail or chassis shop purgatory or, whatever you want to call it, where, hey, so-and-so is going to help me. They're going to rewire the car. And then they get all the wiring stripped out of it. And then they blow their back out and it sits at a dude's shop for 6 years. And then you run out of money or, there's there's entire Facebook groups dedicated to these horror stories. And I think my dad and I talk about this all the time. How many people that had big intentions and probably had the means to do it, right? And it's a scale. It ranges. It runs the gamut. But I'm sure there are countless people that could have made a significant impact or could have had some success. Or if they had just had a little bit of a positive experience, like the car starting idle, they may still be here. But because of that poor experience of getting to the racetrack, they quit before they got started. So I think and you're not the only one. I think of Ryan Rakestraw, RK Racecraft. There are more people doing this. I think Stevie Jackson is kind of doing this to some extent, or at least that's what he did for Sidney Frigo, kind of come in and run the program. That it's an important
Well,
service.
that's where Pro Mod is gone. There's no room for my dad's going to do it in his off time in the garage deal. People with the schedules, like you think of No Prep Kings, you look at this NHRA Pro Mod deal and the investment these people are making, they expect and need to be able to drop their car off at somewhere like Modern Racing with a laundry list of what it needs and pick it up, and it's all done and it's right. And that's kind of been a void in this industry.
Like we've kind of taken it to another level from some of the other guys that were mentioned, because not only do we have a fab shop where we can repair, build cars, we have the wiring shop with a full wiring crew, parts department. We have the hub dyno, but we now, in January, we opened a body shop. So I got 3 full-time people in the body shop. So we're painting our cars now, airbrushing. We're doing wraps, trailers, cars. We got the race team management. So really, truly, we are a turnkey service. And most of the cars that come through here that get the full turnkey service, like they don't leave here until they run on the hub dyno. So we know that when they leave here, they're going to go to the track and work. And we've had several customers leave here and first race, qualify number 1, win the race. Everything just works perfect. And it's not that we're better than anybody. I think the group that I've been able to surround myself with, right? Like I try to surround myself. Yeah. Like I got Todd Beavis, running the
I was just say, shout some of those guys out.
Yeah. Mitch Jackson.
Mike Earl.
Mike Earl kind of does a lot of my project management. Mitch Jackson, who oversees the wiring electronics. These guys, the painters, I hired 2 of the painters from Detroit Speed, right? Doing high-end auto stuff. So we're not just doing paint and body, like we're doing really nice paint jobs. Airbrush guys. I mean, everybody that works here has an extensive background in whatever area they're in. I didn't put a team together that's like, hey, drop your car off, and the guy that's welding the chassis together is wiring it and tuning it, right? Like everybody is specialized. I'm the one that kind of bounces around and just kind of makes sure everything is flowing. But man, these guys they're better than me in their fields, right? And I believe that is a key to our success is letting those guys kind of take it and run with it.
Well, we've seen that. We saw that this weekend with Mason Wright. That's an example there. I mean, taking a guy that is new to Pro Mod, I think it's his 12th race, right? I think I saw an article today in his 12th NHRA Pro Mod event. He's now got a Wally. And I think the deal with Lyle a couple of years ago with the turbo car, put him in the winner's circle. More than one time. I was
talking the other day to Mike, I was telling him, I said, we were looking at some of the stats. We when we started the NHRA deal, we started out with a turbo car with Richard Freeman and Erica, and we were going to take over the world, and that did not work out very well. So we kind of went back, regrouped. Lyle came in, and we started running our Pro Charger car, and ran okay with the Pro Charger car. Never had a lot of great success with the Pro Charger car. As a group, Lyle loved turbos, and he's like, we still had the turbo car from when Erica and those guys were driving. And he was like, man, let's bring the turbo car back out. So we did. And I actually looked at the stats last night. So we ran 17 races with Lyle total in the turbo car, and we won 3 and runnered up at 2. Pretty good. Right. Like I guess I never realized it until, and then, Mike actually said to me, he goes, man, those are pretty stout numbers.
I got to say, man, I think it's really impressive.
So it's cool. That kind of goes back to the race and the different power adders and things. But the reason we're able to do that is like, I got 2 full-time guys that run the race team, right? Run Mason Wright still, build the motors, go through the car. I mean, that car's in a million pieces right now after New England. Motors completely tore down, chassis tore down, everything's gone through, put back together. So when we show up in Bristol, we're ready to race. Because my motto, I tell customers and I tell my guys that work here, is you win races at the shop, you lose them at the racetrack, right? So we don't pull out, whether it's our customers, whether it's our in-house program. The cars don't leave the shop until they're ready. And that goes back to what you were saying about chassis type jail, things like that. Like it's been said, I've heard it that, oh man, you go to Modern, it's super expensive and it takes forever, right? It takes forever. Well, the reason it takes forever is because you don't get anything good fast, right? And the reason it's expensive is because if you buy on price, you pay twice, right? those are kind of our mottos here. But it just takes these guys, everybody that works here, take a lot of pride in what they do. It takes time to make sure it's right. But the other thing is, like most cars that get dropped off here to get turnkeyed or fixed, is we do everything, right? So where a guy might have it at the chassis shop for a couple months, 6 months, 8 months, a year, and then it gets out and goes to the wiring shop. Then it goes, oh, it's done wiring. Okay, let's go get it plumbed at Brown and Miller. And then, okay, let's go to Fuel Tech and dyno it. Okay, we'll go to the track now. It's been 2 years, right? Well, it may take us a year and a half, but your car's only been in one place.
Yeah.
Sometimes people have a hard time with that. They're like, why do you have it so long? We're like, listen, we still got it done faster. It still takes time. And the people that are successful, the people the customers that trust us, man, a lot of them have success, and we're big on the support after the sale, right? Once the customer picks the car up, my phone is open all the time, on the weekends, at nights. I mean, it's to the point sometimes my wife's not real happy about it because people are calling all the time. And if I can answer, I answer. What Mitch wiring, he's answering the phone on the weekends. Todd's answering the phone. So it just, we like to provide a service, and our customers become our family, and we want to see them and teach them how to race and be successful.
I think it's an incredible service. And I think you make a lot of valid points, because I have personal experience, like tons of stories I could give you about that exact dance. The car is going to be here for so long, then it's going to be there, and then you got to haul it across the country to get painted. And then, I mean, it's just such a rigmarole. And to your earlier comment, I do think it's not a completely cost prohibitive thing. Like, not to make this like a total, business promo for you and modern racing, but like, you don't got to be Mason Wright in HRA Pro Mod Racing, like to do business with modern. Like, I'm blown away by the number of small tire cars, no time cars, no prep cars that come through. And we know that there are levels to this, and that's kind of a different category, but I see you cranking those cars out as well. And it's, you guys, like us here, you paint a wide swath. I mean, you've sent me pictures of that X275 car you did, the Nova you did for Stravinos. Like, these are cars that are seeing action in 4840 shootouts. I mean, you've got a presence in a lot of different places. So I hope people recognize that it's not something where you don't have to be Elite Motorsports or one of these top tier operations to have a meaningful transact and to have that experience. Because
I'll be honest. Some of the most enjoyment I have of people coming to the dyno or helping are some of the grassroots racers, the bracket racers. We just did we built a car for Russell Miller, a bracket car. It's a 568 Camaro with a butt that makes 1,000 horsepower, runs 530s. Man, that's
Mr. Miller, right?
That was a lot of fun, right? Mr. Miller. And then, we did some updates. Kevin Crawford, who's a PD Fleet guy, great bracket racer. We did some updates to his car. He's won like everything under the sun in the last 2 months with that car. And it was like, I don't know, a couple $1,000 worth of updates here. Ladder bar car, old car. So we like doing that. So like, we do a lot of high end stuff. It's awesome, but it's kind of a breath of fresh air sometimes to get some of these grassroots guys to come in here and help them out and do well.
Because that little bit of success that, having a reliable hot rod and faith in your mount or in your whip, that, I mean, who knows what those guys, I mean, some of them
they
guys
might be in a pro mod soon.
They might be in a pro mod in a few years.
You never know. I always say, the guy walking around the track that you would never pick out, that's the guy with the budget to run pro mod, right?
Yeah.
You never know.
And speaking of pro mod, let's get back to that, because I mean, you're right now, you're headed to Bristol for a back-to-back weekend here with an HRA pro mod. And what did you guys, I mean, I think in Chicago, I think you guys went out first round and,
we did.
And blew the motor up, had problems first round, but then you guys have been doing testing, or you found something going in to this weekend and ran really well, especially in eliminations. And how is that? What did you guys find? And how's that going to carry over to Bristol this weekend?
Well, we didn't find anything between the two races. Honestly, what we found, to be just completely frank, was at the end of last year was the Mike Janis power plant that we started running. Mike and I Gosh, I remember Mike and I being at the track when we were in our 20s, right? When I was running IHRA Mountain Motor Pro Stock, and he was with his dad, so we've been around each other forever. The rights,
another Alanabi connection.
Alanabi connection. Yes. But, last year we ran a different power plant that the rights owned, because the rights came to us last year and was like, hey, we want you to help us with our program. We own the car, we own the engines, we own everything. We just want you to manage it, right? Kind of like a Danny Sorrow deal. I was like, oh, great. This would be good. I had never raced a Roots car before. So I was like, sure, why not? That's another one I'll check off my list.
Yeah.
And so we started racing and working with their stuff. And we didn't have a great year. We had an incident in Chicago where Mason crashed. Luckily, being part of our program, Richard Freeman stepped right up. And said,
I almost forgot about the crash.
Yeah. So he unfortunately, third race, he put it on the lid and got a little bit injured. But Richard right away was like, here, just take one of the cars I have and put the motors in it and keep racing. So Richard really kept the rights on track, and we finished out the year right before Vegas. I was like, man, I know I'm new to this Roots deal, but I just feel like we don't have the power to be competitive right now. And Mike Janis had reached out to me, and he's like, look, I want you to try one of my motors at the end of the year. I'm just going to, send it to you, try it, see if you like it. So we went to Vegas, didn't run real well at Vegas, but it was a totally new combo. But the dyno showed a lot of potential, enough to where the Wrights and I got together and we purchased 2 Janus motors and jumped onto their supercharger, their engine package, kind of teamed up with them for this year. Had some good success testing over the winter. Went to Gainesville, ran really well in Gainesville, qualified number 5, won first round. And then second round, we had a broken spark plug. So just an unfortunate incident, right? I always say there's a million ways to lose. Yep. There's only one way to win, a million ways to lose. So had a cracked spark plug second round. So we left Gainesville really inspired, like, man, qualified number 5. We got good power, let's go on to the next race. So we showed up in Phoenix and ran really well in Phoenix. Qualified again, top 5. I think it was 5th or 6th again. We won the shootout. There was a shootout there for the quickest average qualifying. It was a total seal shootout. So we won that, which was really neat. And then went to the semifinals. And in the semifinals, we had a cam sync error. And the car was misfiring down the racetrack against the eventual winner, which was Rivenbark. So now there's like the first 2 races, just dumb stuff happening, right? So we go on to Chicago. I'm like, all right, this is going to be behind us. We're going to run good. And we did. We ran good in Chicago, qualified well again. And first round, Mason goes 007 red. And it was like, oh, well, then at like 300 feet, it burns a piston out of it. It was like a double hand whammy.
Yeah.
So we came home from Chicago knowing we had a great piece, just needed to get the chips to fall the right direction, right? We spent some more time on the dyno, kind of figured out why we might have burned a piston. So went to New England with high hopes that we would run well again. And we did. We ran well through qualifying. Not probably as good as we wanted to until the last qualifier. We really kind of laid it down. Not trying to. It's just one of those runs where everything was smooth, the stars aligned, and it ran fast. So we qualified number 5 again. And I just had a really good feeling on race day. Like, Mason was driving awesome. The crew, they were doing a great job with the car. And the car was in a window where I was like, man, this is our race to lose. Like, it's going to be my job to race smart. Like, I'm going to have to play chess tomorrow. And that's what we did. We just took one round at a time and raced each opponent to how I thought we had to run with that opponent. And the cards fell in our favor.
And got Mason his first win in drag racing, period, if I understand it. And this dude I think he's like shocked on the top end. They stick the mic in his face. I think he was on Fox, the big show.
It was live.
And I mean, of course, anybody in that position, he's going to be at a loss for words. And then he's riding in the pickup back to the starting line with John Force, Doug and TJ Coughlin. So, I mean, we hope to get Mason on here, but he's out in the field at work today. But that had to be, I mean, he's going to be riding that for a long time.
Oh, it's awesome. And for me, like, I'm not going to sit here and say I've won a million races and this, that, and the other, but I feel very fortunate that I've been involved with a lot of winning teams, won championships, won a lot of races, and probably this will go down as one of the most meaningful wins to be able to see the emotion, to give his whole family the win, right? His dad, brother, they're wrenching on the car, Mason driving. I mean, it's awesome when you see that kind of emotion.
And just he's a great dude, great family. Like you're saying, a small operation. And one thing I noticed too about the winner circle photo is normally it's like, you can't even see the backdrop because there's so many people up there. But in your winner circle photo, there's like 4 dudes. And so you guys kind of have a smaller team, and it's a family team compared to the rest of the operations out there.
We do. We run a small group, small and efficient, right? Like I'm a firm believer, like, the engine guy works on the engine, the back half guy works on the back half, like nobody steps in like those guys. You don't need 15 people to run one of these cars. You just need 2 or 3 really good guys. So we are a smaller team. But I feel like that kind of makes it special, right? We're a single car team. We don't really have anybody to share data with. So when you're going up against the pro lines, group with all the data that the crew chiefs share, and you're going against the Frank Manzos who've been doing it for as long as he has, Frank and Larry Morgan, those are 2 mentors of mine, right? I've worked with Frank. I was actually Larry's crew chief when he won in Denver, when he beat AJ in the burn down.
Oh yeah, that was a good one.
So
you're talking Wes's language now.
Yeah.
He's a Larry Morgan guy.
I'm a big Larry Morgan guy.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, I was Larry Morgan's crew chief that year, and brought Larry Morgan wins. He hadn't had them since the 90s, right? So I've been very fortunate in this sport to be involved in some really great moments, emotional moments. And I think that's what drives me and keeps me wanting to do it, right? Winning is great, but when you get to do it and bring these people the satisfaction they're looking for, it's pretty awesome.
Oh, and like knowing how hard it is, knowing how expensive it is, how difficult the logistics are, and travel and everything that goes into this journey that we're all on. I mean, it's a pretty unbelievable thing. And when you can deliver that to a guy, like a family like the Wrights, I mean, it's a pretty amazing thing.
It's awesome. And kudos to them. Like they got it right from the start, right? Like I can't express enough when these people want a successful program. I mean, when I say they got it, they rolled in, said, here's our equipment, and what else do we need to be successful? And other than just me and Mason talking during the week about how the race went and what we're going, they don't even ask questions about what we're doing. Like if I tell them, hey, this race, we're going to put the back tires on the front, we're going to try it, Mason's like, okay, cool. Like there's zero, they have 100% faith in what we're going to do. And that is a big key to the success of their program.
Now, what do you make of, I mean, a couple of things, and I appreciate you being so gracious with your time, Justin. We've had you on here for a hot minute, but I love conversations like this and talking to people like you. Can you give me a little bit of, I mean, I remember going back to those early days of Pro Modified, and I was blown away, like not early days of Pro Modified, but my kind of hands-on experience in the mid 2000s. And I was blown away, like, because all of my racing experience previously had been in and around pro stock stuff. I was shocked by the lack of adjustments that were made. Like I would bump into a crew chief and they got the car from the chassis shop and never changed the 4-link ever. Never.
Right.
Like,
you
know,
like
didn't
change that 4-link.
You ain't changing that. You might as well weld it solid.
Yeah.
And
our 4-link bolts were rusted. Anytime we had to change those things, we had to break out the WD.
I mean, it's kind of an interesting thing, right? Because if you think back to, like, it used to be so much about just like managing the power, slipping the clutch, making it go, whatever. But it's come so far since then. And I think you make a couple of points that are worth talking about, despite, it is more complicated than it's ever been. But the pathway to success is there. And to your point about, like, you don't have to have 75 guys. I think there's a lot of people that are very concerned that Pro Mod is quickly becoming out of reach. But I personally feel like this thing has there's a long road to hoe here. I mean, look no further, World Series of Pro Mod a few short months ago, Derek Ward winning that race, what I believe is inarguably amongst, if not the most competitive Pro Mod race in the world, and doing it with a car that was built 18, 19 years ago. And I'm not saying it doesn't have all the latest greatest pieces on it.
And that's a good
but another
point too.
Small team.
Yep.
Because I think Mason's car, is that not the Danny Rowe car from however many years ago, or
17.
am I wrong?
Yeah, the car was built.
It's 7 or 8 years ago.
That car was built in 2017.
Shout out to my buddy Rick Jones, Jones.
Yeah,
RJ car. Sorry to interrupt. I was thinking about that earlier. That it's another older car.
But that's an interesting storyline as well, because, and where I was headed with this is just that you mentioned something earlier, how fertile this community is. I think that I believe that still exists. When I look at, that's why I get like, why I'm rabid about pro modified racing, because when I look at our space, there's so much opportunity there. There's so much meat on the bone with this particular group of people for a multitude of reasons. Like, it may be more expensive, but I think the pathway to success is much more defined. I mean, there are people that can help you. There are shops that can get your car, at least send you out, get you started, on the right foot. I mean, it's a little bit more manageable. I mean, a lot of the cars that are running at the front are not, utilizing a bunch of super exotic parts. I mean, in a lot of situations, these are off the shelf items, that are being masterfully used. Right. And I don't think the harmonious relationship between all those parts and pieces is easy, but it does seem like it is attainable. And that is part of the magic of it, is that you don't have to have an engine shop with 27 guys working around the clock developing a new intake manifold to go be successful in pro modified drag racing.
I think in pro modified, that the biggest advice I can give any team that's currently running, or even somebody who wants to get into pro modified racing, or any type of racing where you're going to have a tuner or you're going to have a shop that's going to help you, is pick a shop, pick a tuner that you believe in, and ride the highs and the lows with them. Because the lows, are what make you great when you dig through them, right? So when you see these teams that are bouncing between different tuners and different shops because they're not getting the results that they want, they're probably not ever going to get the results that they will, because you can't replace time, right? The Wrights, we didn't have a good year last year. They very easily could have said, you know what, we're going to go a different direction. And I don't know that I would have blamed them, but they believed in us. And when I kind of spelled out what we wanted to do, they were like, yep, we got your back. And now they're reaping the benefits of that, so that's the biggest thing I think I see wrong with what's going on right now is it's either shop of the week, tuner of the week, or part of the week, right? Like,
I mean, I think that story about the guy, and I'm not, throwing stones here, but it's the reality is that you see that dude that has a rough weekend, and then you see him start to make do the parade down the pits, and he's going into one trailer, into the next trailer. And it's like, he's waiting for someone to tell him what he wants to hear.
Correct.
Right. And then he hears that, and it's like, you know what? I'm done with this other deal. I've talked to so-and-so, and you're so correct. And I think patience is like, what do they say? Patience is a virtue, but it's 100%. Massively undersold. Like we talk about it just in the media business. People are like, well, how do you do this? And how do you get to this point? It's like, do it for 20 years. Don't stop. Like, and that's like the secret to success. Don't stop.
Yeah.
Like in drag racing, this is one of the reasons we do the DI 30 under 30. Like, especially for young people, you're going to have 1,000 reasons, 1,000 very valid excuses to quit, right? Like, success is few and far between. It's
look
expensive,
at John
it's
Force,
hard, it's hot.
Right?
Yeah.
John Force was not successful at the beginning of his career, right? But all we know now is how successful he is. Well, he never gave up, right?
That's really what it boils down to.
Yeah, your most successful teams are going to be the ones who stand behind their crew chiefs, their crew members, their businesses, their anything, right? So that's probably my biggest advice, and what I think is maybe a little bit wrong with the industry, and I don't like the direction I see, is like, we got to buy these brand new parts. Oh, this tuner says you got to rewire the car and run this ECU, and this tuner says, so next thing you know, a guy is spending $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 to get his car switched over, and he doesn't run any better. Right.
And had he just stayed the course the first time,
then he would be further along. And don't get me wrong, sometimes there's times and reasons.
Absolutely.
For change, But I'm just saying, I see a lot of that when I go to the World Series of Pro Mod, when I go to, PDRA races, even in NHRA, the minute, if a guy has one or two bad weekends, all of a sudden you start hearing the chirping, and it's like, man, nobody's out there to, as business owners in the industry. And I think I speak for other ones. We don't wake up every morning and go, oh man, who can we screw now? Right. Like,
right.
Everybody.
Man, I hope we lose this weekend. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, everybody. I mean, I think you have to give, and like you said, there's exceptions to the rule, no doubt about it. And there's times to shake things up. There's times to, I think I tell people a lot that one of the things, there's a great book by Seth Godin that talks about knowing when to quit. That's an unsung, and that doesn't mean quit altogether, but it's like identifying when, okay, this option is no longer a good option, or whatever. And that's a valuable skill, but patience, I think, is perhaps the most unsung hero in the sport of drag racing, because it really is few and far between that. I think about some of the early success, like Sienna Wildgust is, in my opinion, a really good example, because simply qualify. I know people and am like related to the son of people who have literally spent their entire lives chasing that and never got it done. I mean, how many people do you and I know? You and I know, Mike, Justin, pro stock racers that have chased that dream, burnt up a marriage, burnt up a bank account, burnt up a business, all these different things, chasing that dream and never got it. I mean, still after it, still beating that drum. And that's just what it takes. I mean,
100%.
that is, and for the people that have that early success, Camry Caruso, another one, winning a race.
Yes.
Like, people have all but died trying to get that done.
Well, I think the age has changed, right? Like when I came up, I feel like I was part of the last, what I call the great era of pro stock, is when I came into pro stock, and not taking away from anything that it is now, even pro modified racing. But, the last couple of years of pro stock racing, I was racing against Warren Johnson, Kurt Johnson, Larry Morgan, all those guys. Bob Glidden was still out there when I was racing pro stock crew chief. And, like those were the guys that drove the trailers, built the motors, did everything from that era. Greg Anderson is still cut from that era, but he evolved a little bit and brought people in. Pro stock has changed to now where, to be successful, you really need to align yourselves with the Elite Motorsports or the KB Racing, right? The privateers, they're going to struggle. It's going to be tough. High level pro mod racing is nearing that. Like, you want to run high level pro mod racing, you're going to have to align yourself with a team who can get you there. The guy, like Mike's dad pulling his nitrous car out, and heck, I'm going to go to a World Series of Pro Mod. Probably not going to qualify. You'll be part of a great show, but if you want to win today, you don't have to have someone keep your car, maintain your rig, fly in crew chiefs. But I believe the landscape's changed to where you at least need to affiliate yourself with some of these higher end shops.
And I think it's like a blessing and a curse. The Garth Brooks double-edged sword thing, it's a blessing and a curse.
Oh, yeah, we got one in. That's 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, that's 2 weeks in a row. I got one. But it's like, it really is a magical thing that there is a pathway to success.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
you can call you can call Mike Janis, you can call all these different people, Richard Freeman, the Pro Line Camp, call Dillard, call Ricky Smith. I mean, I'm so happy for what Mike Thielen is experiencing right now alongside Ricky Smith. Mike Thielen is one of the best guys in our whole community, a world-class human being. Yes. And like, it's great to see him having, some success. And it's just the fact that, like you said, there are pathways to being successful relatively quickly, but it doesn't
as a single car team.
Right.
I mean, I think that's a key thing. Like Thielen, you talked about, of course, Mason Wright is, and then you have some super teams over there as well. But it hasn't gotten to the point where there are only two teams to align yourself with.
Yeah, I don't think Pro Mod will ever get there. I hope it doesn't.
It's a little bit too much, outlaw, cowboy.
Yeah. There's a lot of cowboys in this space, and cowgirls,
and I love it.
I
love the cowboy side. But even like Derek Ward, who won your race, right? He's aligned with, Salemis, right? Yep. That give him a hand, right? But he still runs his program. And that's one thing I really love about the Pro Mod stuff is just, man, everybody gets along, right? We have that new hospitality deal that we take to all the NHRA races, and every Friday night we have dinner as a group, right?
Man, I think you guys were riding high this weekend too. It looked like steaks on the menu.
We were.
Oh, yeah.
Castellano brought in some ribeye from Western
yeah,
beef, which was
some
pretty
Western
awesome.
beef.
Yeah,
I've never had some actual Western beef. I would like to. I've seen it on the side of that car forever.
So
I need some Western
Scott
beef.
Tidwell brings in people, and they cook all day on Friday, and there's 50, 60 people under the hospitality tent that we're all racing against each other. We all want to rip each other's throats out an hour earlier during qualifying, but then everybody's having drinks and eating dinner. So that's something I wasn't used to experiencing in pro mod or pro stock, because it's so like, don't look at me. You can't come in my pit. You can't come in here. And in pro mod, it's just one big family, happy family.
Well, I got to tell you, Justin, there's a lot of things. So what we saw this weekend, in my opinion, was a shining example of the strength of pro modified. And I'm not throwing stones. I think I've said that 70 times this episode. So fuck it. I'll just throw some. But there was 15 top fuel cars, 15 funny cars, 15 pro stock cars, and 25, 22.
24 committed and 22 ended up showing.
22 pro mods in Epping, New Hampshire.
Yes.
To me was a real statement, but kind of parlaying what Jeff Thomas said earlier about it has become more than a race. Like, I think that it's easy to point like, oh, we need to take some weight off the nitrous cars to get more participation. Oh, we need to pay more money to get some participation. We need to get on TV to get some participation. No, you need to take this thing from a drag race to something else. Now you've got that neighborhood party that no one wants to miss, because that shit, no one pays enough attention to it. Yes. But I would be willing to bet that Friday night dinner has more long-term impact on the pro mod deal than anything that happens in the rules, whether or not they allow screw blowers, all of that. Yes. Creating that community and getting everybody, tearing down these walls, getting everybody headed in the same direction and agreeing on a common goal, like that's when the magic happens. And I hope you're as proud of that as you should be, because I know you've been a driving force with the NHRA Pro Mod Series for the last several years. And to see it rebound post-COVID in the fashion that it has is pretty freaking special, Justin.
Yeah, it's awesome. There's a group of us. It's not just me, but there's a group of us that really push this thing. We have a board, and we meet every week. We're trying to find sponsors, trying to put stuff together, working with NHRA on rules. NHRA's been great to work with. The racers have been great, right? The new racers that have come on. It's been really, really rewarding to see the class rebound, like you're saying, and then here, like I had a meeting in Epping with several high execs with NHRA, and they told us basically, we really like what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. We're watching, and your time is coming very soon where you're going to be on the main stage. And that was really rewarding to hear that from them.
I mean, I think it's long overdue. I mean, I really do. And I think that I'm excited to hear that, because I believe that this is pro modified racing is no doubt a professional endeavor, but I do feel like it's the highest level of sportsman drag racing. It speaks to the grassroots guys. It speaks to the weekend warriors. It speaks to everybody, just has some respect for or admiration, if not for the courage just of these drivers to get in these sons of bitches, but also just for the monster that the cars are and how hard they are to go down the track, and how, I mean, a 2,600 some odd pound suspended door slammer running 570s at 250. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that funny cars ran that. So it's an incredible thing where this deal has come. And I just, as someone who lives and bleeds, eats, sleeps, breathes pro modified drag racing, I appreciate your commitment to it. And I'm excited to see what comes next for everybody involved, man, because I think these are heady times for pro modified racers.
For sure. Definitely. Well,
hey, Justin, thank you so much for being a part of this, dude. We appreciate you a bunch. We're proud to bring all these different voices and put a camera on them and let people get to know you guys. And I'm excited to see you continue to be successful. And I look forward to seeing you at the racetrack soon, brother.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yep. Thanks, Mike. You guys can shut the light off. Are you guys probably in the same building?
No, we are not.
Are you at dinner somewhere? No, I'm just joking.
No.
I gotta get in on one of these dinners. Yeah, I got to get in on one of these dinners.
You got to come to Mooresville, man.
You got to come you got to come to Charlotte. And
Wes only comes into Charlotte as like a connecting flight or
now.
to
Look,
go
have you been to the
else.
airport? I can't find anything. I can't even hardly find my way out. It's unbelievable. No, I love Charlotte, actually. Yeah. If we didn't move to Texas, we probably would have moved to Charlotte, Mooresville. But anyways, Justin, thanks a bunch, man, and we'll see you soon, okay? Stay out of trouble.
All right.
See you.
All right, guys, what a show, man. I want to give a huge shout out to Redline Synthetic Oils, Stroud Safety, Racers Club, Flow Racing, everybody that supports this show and our entire operation here at Drag Illustrated. Thanks, Mike, for being a part of this. Blake in the green room on the ones and twos back there. Appreciate you guys. And Jeff Thomas, thank you so much. Very enlightening conversation. I thought that was actually like fantastic.
Energetic dude, man. I mean, you could tell why he's got a following. And this has been a cool show because again, if we had John Force on here, that would have been the only icing on that cake. But going from Force talking about his retirement to Jeff Thomas, War in the Woods, to Justin Elkes, NHRA, Pro Mod. I mean, that's what it's about. And again, like you said, we're really proud that we're able to cover that swath. No one's going to tell us we can't do that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's really been the magic since day one is we said we would never be bound by any sanctioned series, make or model. We wanted to cover the entire sport of drag racing because I felt it was going to take all of us to get where we're going. Yeah. Like as I said earlier, there are certain spots of this sport that are scalding hot, others that are simmering, or maybe some that aren't in the shape that they were a few years ago. But we can make up for one another and we can carry one another if we are willing to work together and recognize that what's good for one of us is good for all of us. And I think that one of my favorite points from today's show, and Blake, we need to clip this out, is Jeff Thomas talking about, race promoters needing to make money. Like, this is a real thing. Like,
and tracks need to make money.
Tracks need to make money.
Tracks and promoters working together.
Yeah, 100%. And the more of that we see, that's how tracks improve. That's how you get the paved parking instead of the gravel or the grass. That's how you get the permanent bathrooms. There has to be some sort of financial incentive for the people that are breaking their backs to put these events on. It takes all of us, man. And Mike, thanks for joining me, man. Great show here. Thank you guys for joining us. Remember, click subscribe. If you're following along on the Drag Illustrated YouTube channel, help us grow this thing. Click subscribe, join the family, be part of a growing community of people who eat, sleep, and breathe the sport of drag racing. And we will see you next Wednesday right here on the Drag Illustrated YouTube channel, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. Come see us, and I'll see you at the races.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Mike. Oh, I forgot the outro music. I can throw some outro music on here. There we go.
Somebody's got to hit in stream with JT.
Oh, yeah. JT's not here. Peace out, everybody. Love you.
Don't touch the buttons.
JT JT gets all